I have the honor of introducing Karen tonight. So our speaker is Karen Power. She is a retired college professor, a grandmother of 4, a volunteer trail maintainer, and an educator at local parks. Her long-distance hikes include 11,000-mile Florida Trail, the 1,400-mile Buckeye Trail, the 480 French Way on the Camino de Santiago, Mount Kilimanjaro, and others. Karen's 3,000-plus miles of long-distance hiking have inspired non-lucrative hobbies, such as a freelance writer, cartoonist, and a writing coach. Please help me to welcome Karen to the stage.
Hi, and thank you. I have just a couple thank yous myself. I want to thank Dan for inviting me, and Maureen and Amanda with the city of Springboro. I also want to acknowledge that Andy Niekamp and his mom and dad are here. Andy is the founder of Dayton Hikers, and he is the man who taught me how to backpack through his company, Outdoor Adventure Connection. My children are here, all children and all grandbabies are here tonight, and I'm just thrilled. And I'd especially like to thank my youngest son, Anthony. Any professionalism in this PowerPoint is due to his expertise. So I am a retired college professor, so I do have to say at the beginning, as I've said many times, pay attention because there will be a quiz later. How many of you have been to Costa Rica? Oh, many of you, very good. I know that my friend Lori, where's Lori Davis? Where is she? Lori used to live in Costa Rica. So I'm here to inspire those who have been and those who are planning to go to hike this wonderful country. So what is the Camino de Costa Rica? It is a 170-mile hiking trail across rural Costa Rica. The first hiker crossed in 2018, so it's a young trail. It's self-guided or with a tour company. My hiking partner, Tammy, and I were solo hikers. And the purpose of the trail is to build tourism in rural areas. So you can see that the trail stretches from the Caribbean to the Pacific. It is not a wilderness trail. It is not a religious Camino, as the name would suggest, but it was inspired by the Camino de Santiago, as many trails have been. There are 16 stages, and like the Camino de Santiago, the caminante, the hiker, carries a passport. And we paid for our passport. We paid $10 for our passport, but it's divided into the 16 stages. You can record the date, the miles, the elevation, difficulty, and any notes, and you can read my scribbled notes there. It's like a journal. One of the unique features of this passport is that the QR code here links to a trail app that I'll tell you what that is. I have stamps from all across Costa Rica that are just, they're good memories. How is the trail marked? There's always a hummingbird to mark the trail. Some of them are informal, like the telephone post, but the most common was the mojon, which is in the middle. It is concrete, is about 2.5 feet high, and it tells you what stage you're in. So there are 16 stages. Sometimes it'll tell you how far you are from Ticos, which is the end, but sometimes it didn't. I used maps and guides, and this is a book that there's a new edition of this, 2024, which I would recommend you get the new edition. I had the old edition, and there were changes. But it also is organized according to the 16 sections. And it's a turn-by-turn guide. It shows waypoints, lodging, water, banks, markets, post office, gives distances and elevation. And what I really appreciated was it had the WhatsApp contact information for the lodging, because I booked all of the lodging ahead of time. I also used Far Out. This is it's a live tracking app. I read the hiker comments. I like it because it's available offline. It gives a lot of information to the hiker, where the lodging is, if there's a stream crossing. You can do elevation view or you can do map view. But I also highly recommend Wikiloc, which I didn't find out about until I was in Costa Rica and people heard I was on trail and told me I needed to get that. But this is the app that connects back to the passport page. Where is Costa Rica? It is between Nicaragua and Panama and Central America. And a little bit about this wonderful country. It's the oldest democratic republic. There's no standing army. In 1948, the government chose to invest money that would go into a standing army into the people. Agriculture, there's services for foreign companies, and Tammy works for a iPhone center. She's iPhone call center. Ecotourism is very up and coming in Costa Rica, which I'll also talk about. 90% of the people speak Spanish. It's 75% Roman Catholic, and it's about the size of West Virginia. So there's a saying in Costa Rica called pura vida, and the first time I was there, I didn't know what that meant, but it's more of a way of life. It's kind of their mantra. It means happiness, gratitude, simplicity, and you'll find it on slides, and there's plenty of merchandise where you can buy the expression pura vida. Why did I go to Costa Rica? I volunteered on a turtle research station in 2019 with Workaway. I volunteered on at the Buckeye nesting beach. I was there for 4 weeks as camp cook. Cook is not a term I usually associate with myself, but the marine biologists were very helpful and helped me cook. And it's open to eco-tourists. And those two girls there they're eco-tourists. They paid money to come and work with the marine biologists and live on the compound with us. And one morning I volunteered, the morning before I left actually, I volunteered to work the hatchery. The hatchery is where the turtles who are rescued, the eggs, they're buried in the sand in the hatchery. And I was expecting to have a nice relaxing morning as the sun was coming up. My shift was from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. and just by the ocean, comfortable with a book. And I noticed one of the nests started hatching, and all these little turtles, about 100 little turtles, started to emerge from the sand. So I was the only one in the hatchery. I collected my little charges, and we were supposed to count them and try to weigh and measure at least 15. So I picked one up, and he was about 1.6 ounces. And I can't tell you the wonder and the fascination to hold that new life right there in your hand. His little legs were moving. He was anxious to get down to the sea, and I was just holding him up. But just to imagine that he would grow to be 6 feet in length, and this wild and wonderful, gentle creature. And so I named my little turtle, I named him Lester, and I gave him a little pep talk because I knew what Lester didn't know, and that was of the 10,000 hatchlings from that season of turtle eggs that were rescued, only one would survive. So I was hoping it was Lester, and I looked him in the eye and I said, "Lester, it's a big ocean out there. Watch your back, buddy. Live long and prosper." And I set him in the sand, and he went to the ocean. I was back in Costa Rica in 2023 as a chaperone with Legacy Christian Academy. That's the intrepid Spanish teacher. And that's me down there. And once we got to Costa Rica, I was trying to get everybody in a selfie, but you can't go anywhere with 10 teenagers and not have an adventure. But that's where I met Tammy. Tammy was also a chaperone for the Costa Rican kids, and I didn't know her very well, but she had bunked in our cabin a couple nights, and I have a very short list of criteria for hiking partners. She was very nice, and she didn't snore. But I didn't know anything about her, so when I invited her a year ago to go with me, she jumped at the chance and said yes. And that was the smartest thing I did, take a Costa Rican with me. Tammy is 50 years my junior. She's 21. I kept calling her the kid, but she's one tough tica. She hung in there. She wasn't a hiker. That's a recent picture of Tammy. Now every time she goes hiking, she sends me a picture because she says I turned her into a hiker. So I have to explain the term tica because I use it in the presentation. The Costa Ricans call themselves Ticos, And it is not a diminutive term. It's a term that they have adopted for themselves, and they refer to themselves as Ticos or Ticas. And I thought that was so interesting that I looked the etymology up, and apparently nobody knows where it started or what it means. So I thought, that kind of sounds like a Hoosier. Nobody knows what a Hoosier is or how it got started. But at least we're Buckeyes. Come on, we're all nuts, right? Okay, physical geography. This is what makes Costa Rica so special, the physical geography. And as you can see, get it? That's a little Ring of Fire humor there. So Costa Rica is on the Ring of Fire, and the 452 volcanic structures on the Ring of Fire, 121 are in Costa Rica, and the arrow points to Costa Rica there. I'm going into teacher mode here. So this is how those volcanic structures were formed. So the water saturates, the Pacific Ocean saturated that tectonic plate and made it very heavy. So it started to sink underneath the other tectonic plate. The water seeped down into the mantle. The mantle was heated and became magma, and the magma formed a volcano. So there are tremors in Costa Rica every single day. There are, not all of them are felt, but at least 241 are felt per year. And the volcanic rocks and the ash made the soil very fertile once everything decomposed. And I snapped this picture because I wanted to show you that these are avocado and they're the size of your hand. That's how fertile the land is down there. So big. You've never seen such a big avocado. And also another interesting distinction that Costa Rica has is that it's about 300 to 600 miles north of the equator, which makes it tropical. So all these wonderful species live in Costa Rica. This guy up here in the corner, he's a little dart frog. He's about 1.5 inches. But this grasshopper down here, he's 6 inches. He is 6 inches. He was as big as my hand, scared me one morning outside my cabin when I saw this huge grasshopper. But Costa Rica is 0.03% of the land in the world. On Earth, it occupies 0.3%, but it has 6% of the world's diversity. This was our lodging. We had 13 hiking days, 1 hostel, 2 tents, 4 cabins, 5 homestays. The homestays were my favorite because we got to live in the family's house and eat dinner with them. These are some of the places where we stayed. That was the hostel. Cost per person, I'll just summarize this briefly by saying it cost me, and I paid for lodging for me and Tammy, it cost about $1,000. If you go with a guide service, it's going to cost you between $3,000 and $4,000. So this is your basic gear. And if you forget sunscreen or an umbrella, you can buy it there. And your umbrella can do double duty on sunny days because there are many days without any shade at all. So I divided my presentation up to talk about it by the regions. So there are 4 main regions. And that orange dot is the trail across Costa Rica. Coastal lowlands, you'll see there's the Central Valley. That's where San Jose is, the capital. And the other large city is Cartago, and Tammy was from Cartago, is from Cartago. And then over the Talamanca, this is the Talamanca mountain range. It's called the backbone of Costa Rica, and that was the highest we went on that trip. So how did we get there? So San Jose is the bus transportation system is the core of getting around Costa Rica. And there are probably 4 terminals in San Jose. They all go to different regions in the country, and they're color-coded. So the bus to the Caribbean was green. So I met Tammy at the bus station, and her whole family came. It was a real send-off. We hopped on the bus. It was a 6-hour bus ride to Siquieres. And from Siquieres, we walked to the dock because we had to take a water taxi to the unofficial start of our trip. Now we're in the coastal plains. We landed, the water taxi took us to Barrio de Parismisa, which is a small village of 500 people, and you can see how depressed it is. But the wonderful thing about this little village is that the leatherback turtles nest here every year. And baola in Spanish means leatherback turtles. And so in order to support the island and to discourage poaching of the leatherback eggs, an organization in conjunction with the Costa Rican Coast Guard set up research stations in order to rescue the turtle eggs. And what that does is it brings ecotourism to this little island. And when people pay to come and see the turtles, then that supports the people of the village, because the people of the village are the poachers. They are the ones, and I know this from being in 2019, and everybody knows who they are, but they're poor. And so if they can get good money for turtle eggs, they avail themselves of that opportunity. But luckily, poaching has been reduced by 38% on Parismisa. So this is a little bit about the sea turtles. The leatherbacks are called leatherback because their shell is like leather. They're the largest turtles. To see one in real life is just breathtaking. They're huge. They can live up to be 30 years. And the mother turtle migrates every 2 to 4 years. She lays eggs. She comes back to the same beach where she was hatched. She digs a sand pit. And I know this because I used to do night patrol on the beach, and the mother will dig a hole with her back legs. And when turtle eggs were rescued, that nest had to be replicated back in the hatchery. So the marine biologist would also dig holes. She deposits about 100 eggs, and they incubate for about 60 days. And I thought this was pretty interesting. The sex of the turtle is determined by the temperature of the sand. It's warmer closer to the top. This is a picture of the hatchery. So, and the hatchery it's protected, and there's someone in a hatchery 24/7 just to monitor the hatchery, also to keep the poachers away. The one on the left is the one from 2019, but this is the one on Parismisa. And so when the marine biologists dig the hole in the sand, they put a wire cage around with a net over it to keep the little turtles from running to the sea before they're ready. They haven't been counted yet, so they have to kind of keep track of them first, but the turtles never pay attention to that. They just burrow up around the sand, and these are little hatchlings coming to the sea. They're as big as your hand. They fit in your hand. The day we arrived, and this was our day one, they were having a baola celebration. It was the last day of turtle nesting season. And so there's some ecotourists here. There's some people from the village. And they had made murals, and we're just so excited to have the last release of the season. Yeah, are they going to make it? Well, he made it. I can speak for him. He made them. So we dipped our toes in the Caribbean and spent the night on the island. The next day, we were off. It was another taxi ride, and to the start, which was on the mainland. So our boat guy dropped us off in a cattle field, and that was the start. That was the official start of the Camino. So we were in the lowlands, wet right away. Pineapple plantation was the first plantation we passed. Costa Rica is number 1 in pineapple deportation. This is a banana plantation. The bananas are bagged in blue bags to protect them from bruising and from insects. And then when they're harvested, there's a cable. You can't see the cable in the top left very well, but the bags are attached to the cable, and that's how they cross the road, and then they're taken to the processing camp right there. This is the blossom of a banana tree. I went, what is that? It's so beautiful. And so the one on the far left is the blossom, and then you can see now it's starting to grow. The bottom matures. And what I found fascinating about the bananas, the difference between bananas and plantains. Plantains are harder, but bananas grow upward. So they grow up and plantains grow down. Coconut tree. There are 200 species of palm trees in Costa Rica. So on day one, we realized Tammy's pack was too heavy. So in my hiker experience, I knew we had to lighten that load or we were going to be in trouble for the next 12 days. So we met our first angel Ticos, and we stayed with Mireya and Miguel. It was a homestay, and I kept asking for the post office, like, ¿Dónde está el correos? Because I wanted to mail things back. We had to mail things back to San Jose. And Mireya said, well, here's what we'll do. You hand me everything you want to send back to San Jose. I'll take it to the bus stop. I'll hand it to the bus driver. He'll put it in a bag. He'll put your name on it. And he'll take it to the bus station in San Jose. And I said, you can do that here? It was better than the post office, and it only cost $2. So we got our packs lightened. We were feeling better, and we ate a lot of gallo pinto. This is not gallo pinto, okay? So pronounce it correctly, especially around me and Andy's mom, who also speaks Spanish. Gallo pinto, it means spotted rooster, but it has no chicken in it. It is beans and rice. I had gallo pinto for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. All the time, I had a lot of gallo pinto. It was like eating at Chipotle 3 times a day, only better. But it was always delicious. And they have a wonderful sauce called Lozano sauce that they flavor with that you can actually get online that I love. Now we're in the Central Forest. So we've progressed past the lowlands. We're starting our climb in the Central Forest. Very muddy. So we were just knee deep in mud, and it was hard hiking. But we reached the indigenous territory. We needed some help finding where we needed to be because even though I had a Far Out app, it was fairly new, 2024, had a lot of glitches. But we reached the indigenous area, and their lands are protected by the Costa Rican government because in the 60s and 70s, they were this land was being deforested, and the Indians were being displaced. They were being threatened with violence, and it got to the point where at one point, some parts of Costa Rica were 17% deforested just because it was better for the economy to be an agricultural country. This is a traditional Cabekar home. We had lunch here, and of course it was gallo pinto. This was our trek through the jungle. It was slippery and narrow. This was the only time where we had to have a paid guide, and this is Osvaldo. We paid him about $70 to guide us through the jungle. It was for our own safety, and I didn't know it at the time, but Osvaldo is a game warden, and so he walks to work every day in his boots there, not hiking boots, just waterproof boots. And I was so amazed that this week I read an article, and here's Osvaldo's picture. So part of his job as game warden is to patrol the boundaries of the Cabekar land in order to prevent illegal deforestation. The government, I hear, is not enforcing some of those laws, so he has a tough job. But he guided us expertly through the forest. This was the scariest thing I saw. This is a 170-pound, Osvaldo called it a puma. It's a mountain lion. It was foraging for food. They hunt in the daytime. They're carnivores, and I got a little nervous until Osvaldo said it was just a video. We were standing in front of a wild camera, right where this big cat was. And so now we're coming out of the jungle, and I see a river, Pakwari River, and I don't see a bridge, and I don't see a boat. I see this open air platform. And here, this next slide says it all. So Tammy, she took this selfie. She's like, my mother's going to kill me. My mother's going to kill me. And I'm like, what? So Osvaldo explained what we were supposed to do, because he was going to go ahead of us to get across so he could pull us across. He explained to us that we needed to hook the cage to the frame, get in, secure ourselves and all our belongings, and then he would pull us across. But we had to unhook ourselves. Once we got in there, it was a little hard to get unhooked from the frame, but that's what we did, and we made it safely across. Tammy is there on the other side, and there's some free-range cattle who didn't want us to be there, but we were happy to get across in one piece. That was the highlight of our day. We're progressing toward the Central Valley, and now the Central Valley is, it overlooks Cartago. So we were miles away still, but we had some spectacular views. Now it's day 5. So from the trail, we could see this volcano. It's called Irasu. And years ago in a Spanish textbook, I had read the legend of Irasu. And it's kind of sad how the volcano was named, because there were warring chieftains. This is pre-colonial times. And the chieftain, in order to defeat the other chieftain, sacrifices his beautiful daughter, Iztaru, throws her into the volcano, and that's the center of it. Throws her into the volcano. Well, the volcano gods are pleased, and the volcano erupts and chases the warring Indians away. And I thought, how many times did that work? How many kids did this Akitaba actually have? But it is just a legend. And we had these are. We call these water pears. Tammy called them water apples, but they were by the side of the road. It was the first fresh fruit that I had, and I really, really savored them. This is a typical Costa Rican home. It is concrete, has plaster walls, tin roof, and very colorful. The sugarcane guy is posing for me. He saw me take out my camera. He's holding his machete there, but you can't see it very well. But the Costa Ricans were the Ticos were happy to pose for a picture. And that's his truck. And, okay, Tammy, see that tree, like across the trail? I don't know why Tammy is smiling there, because that tree had just fallen over. The day started out very nice. It was very nice weather, and I made it a point every day to ask, is it going to rain today? And every time the answer would be, we don't know. So you took a chance getting up the mountain and over the mountain before the rain hit. But one day we were stuck in a terrible storm. It started to rain. The wind was blowing. That tree was knocked over the trail. We had to climb over the crown of the tree in order to get back on the road. It was a mud road, and I realized, as the seasoned hiker that I am, we need to get off that mountain. But getting off the mountain, knowing you have to get off and being able to get off are two different things. But when we came to an opening, I saw that there was a paved road. And I said, Tammy, we're going for that road. So we took the first farm road we had down. And by the time, as we were descending, now I had cell reception. And our hosts for that night, they knew there was a storm up on the mountain. And they texted me and said, are you okay? And I said, we're getting off the mountain. We're wet and we're cold and we don't know where we are. And this is Pilar. And Pilar said, I will send Fernando in the car to come and pick you up. So she said, send me a picture where you are. So we made it down to the road. Somehow she knew exactly where we were. Fernando came in his 1990 Suzuki to pick us up, and we spent the night on their farm. and with the cows and the goats and the chickens, and see the mountains all around. But that's when I also realized that there was a network of these homestay Tico moms who were watching out for us. So the next day we were up in the Talamanca Range, again the spine of Costa Rica, the highest point of the trip. The day again started out very nice. We're very happy that Mojon says Etapa 9. We're about 70 miles from Ticos at the end, and it started to rain, and it poured, and we were two wet puppies. And if I could have cut down that big leaf that looks like, it's called the poor man's umbrella. If I could have cut that off at the stalk and carried it, I would have, because I got really cold. But here's what happened next. As we're walking and we're approaching a city, we see a car coming up, and we had no cell reception, and the car was slowing down. And when you're a hiker, that's always very suspicious. But it was Mariana and her husband. They came out to look for us, and they found us on the road, and they put us in their car. And I remember feeling, oh, I was so happy to be warm, but a tree had blown over the road, and we were stuck there for 45 minutes. But I got a chance to warm up. And they have it was a lovely home, very typical Tico home, and see the tin roof, very noisy when it rains. So we had to go through the high South Valley, through the mountains, and it's a narrow valley that is a narrow pathway. This is day 8. This is a view. Every view was spectacular, by the way. There were cleared areas with pastures, and about 1/3 of Costa Rica is cleared for pasture land, and they do export beef. So the cows are up there, and the horse I'm sure was looking for an apple. He's telling us hello. Then now we had the steepest part of the trip. And there was this sign. The sign at the beginning of the road says, warning, if you got here, return. Ahead the road, it's wet and extreme dangerous. Don't risk you or parents' life. Waze, GPS are in error. And we kind of looked at each other and went, but see the sign up there pointing to the trail? That was the way we had to go, so that's the way we went. But see how steep it was? Notice the angle where Tammy is standing. But this was the view, spectacular. And that's the day we met a guide. So this is Pablo. He's a paid guide. His 2 clients were Scott and Miriam. I think that's how you spell it in Irish, because they were from Ireland. And in this picture, we ran into them a few times, and we ran into them on their finish day at Ticos. And the tall guy in the shirt, his name was Fernando. He was the SAG driver. Okay, so when you hire a guide, you get all your lodging arranged. You get your food arranged. You get your luggage transferred. Tammy and I were carrying our packs, and you get a guide. And so, they would pass us in their truck. And I thought, they are glam hiking. Something wrong with that. This is day 9. Now we're at Etapa 11, so we're getting close to Ticos. And I have to speak to the Costa Rican shower experience. Of the 14 days I was in Costa Rica, I had 1 hot shower. And let me just say, a cold shower in a hot climate is still a cold shower. But this is the Costa Rican solution. This is the Tico solution. So this is called the gringos call it a suicide shower. The Ticos call it a termo ducha, which just means warm shower. But it has a heating element inside, and when the water runs past the heating element, it's supposed to heat the water up. But that encasing is minimally waterproof. Okay, so it screws into the pipe, which is coming out of the wall, and the wires attached to the wires, which are also coming out of the wall. This was our bathroom at the cabin. This was it. And you see that it's put together with duct tape there, but to regulate the shower, all the controls were on that white plastic encasement. Okay, so you had to hope that there were no loose wires, because with 220 volts coming, we would have been lit up like a Christmas tree. Day 9, just the natural beauty was just amazing. And we crossed the Pan American Highway, and I got this picture from another hiker. I didn't realize that I had crossed the Pan American Highway, this auspicious 19,000 mile long road, the longest road in the world, that starts in Alaska and ends at the tip of Argentina. We had to walk along the Pan American Highway for a while, so it was very busy. Lots of cars were passing us. It took 50 years to build. I would have thought about all that if I had known that I was on the Pan American Highway, but here's what I took a picture of. There was a truck stop there, and it had hot food. We never got lunch during the day because there was no place to stop and eat. But it had hot food, it had a good bathroom, and that was my memory of Pan American Highway. This was actually my favorite day because there's so much variety. The Tico who's harvesting the raspberries also was happy to pose for his picture. And then we had a homestay at Carlos's house. And I want to explain this slide to you because it was our most memorable homestay. Carlos was a bachelor. He was probably about my age. He had a very eclectic furniture collection, which was old and dusty. The house smelled musty. It was dark. He had collected antiques. There was a Singer sewing machine with a foot pedal and an old upright, and he had a collection of paintings on his wall. He had a signed picture of Elvis right next to his self-portrait of Frida Kahlo. I don't know if you guys... But it's so eccentric, okay? But this was our room. The whole wall was glass, and we had a gorgeous view that morning when we woke up. But the problem was there was no cell reception. I was concerned because we couldn't confirm our stay for the next day. Tammy was concerned because she couldn't text her mom to tell her we were okay. Consequently, her mother was up all night with worry, thinking we were dead, kidnapped, lost, or worse. Tammy was up all night because she was afraid Carlos was going to kill us while we were sleeping. And here's Carlos. He does look a little scary, doesn't he? But I snapped this picture to tease Tammy because he didn't kill us, as I pointed out to Tammy in the morning. But he was fixing us breakfast, so he was holding his knife, and I just couldn't resist. But he was a wonderful cook, and his kitchen was replete with every type of pot and pan you can imagine, and it was delicious. So the next day we walked into Sao Paulo, and we did have cell reception. Well, when we got cell reception, we found out that our rooms had been given away to Pablo, of all people, and his two Irish people. Okay, so now we had to scramble to find a room, and Tammy had been up all night. Her knees were hurting, so we agreed that she would take a taxi to Napoles, and I would hike that day. I get very intense and I get very impatient, so I hiked that day without her, and she took a taxi up to Napoles. The only problem was I didn't know where she was. So I had a lovely day, no rain. I get to Napoles, which is the picture on the left, and it's a village. I see very little. I don't see any people. I see a couple buildings, and I thought, I didn't know where Tammy was, and I didn't have any cell reception. So I figured I should probably start knocking on doors. So I walked a little farther there were 3 houses, and I thought, well, which house could it be? And I walked up to the house with the open door. Now, this is a Costa Rican, I don't know if it's a custom or whatever, but the front door is open a lot. I mean, it's just wide open. I said, Tammy, we would never do that in America. We'd never leave our front door open. But it looked very friendly. So I walked up to the door that was open. I stood outside, though. I didn't go in. I stood outside, and I said, bueno, bueno, which was what people would say to us. So I figured it must be hello or something. And a young man came out, and I said, do you know, in Spanish, I said, do you know Tammy? And he said, no, I don't know Tammy, but I know someone who might know where she is. So he walked me to the house next door, which I had passed because there were crying babies and toys in the front yard, and I thought, well, that's not it. Well, it was it. So Alba came out, and I said, ¿Conoces a Tammy? And she's like, oh, yes, Tammy, yes. She's up on the mountain in a cabin. And I went, oh, because I had walked all day, and I didn't feel like another hike up the mountain. And I said, well, how do I find her? And she said, I will send my children with you. So these were my two little escorts. The little one is Saul, he's 6. He's wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt. And his older brother's 9, he's Mateo. And they thought I was the coolest thing ever. Yeah, especially when they found out I went to Africa and I saw real elephants. Yeah. And we had a very good conversation about Spider-Man because I told him my little grandson loves Spider-Man. And so Saul, yep, if you didn't know, Spider-Man is real. Yep. We were next day, now we're in coffee plantation area, miles of coffee beans. And coffee beans thrive at high altitudes. And this was a close-up of the beans. It takes 8 to 9 months for them to get ripe enough to pick. They have to be hand-picked depending on the quality of the coffee. They have to be hand-picked to be harvested, and then they're dried. The bean is inside, so they're dried for, depending on what kind of coffee you want, that determines how long they're dried. Now we're at day 12, and this is our first view of the Pacific Ocean. Feeling pretty good. So we decided what top are we in? 11. So we decided we're in 15. We're in stage 15, one more stage to go. We decided to get a drink, and I noticed on the map it said Mercado. And I thought, oh, a grocery store. We'll go get something to drink. So we found it. It was on a farm, and this was the farmer's wife, and they had a garage, and they just opened their garage and put a few drinks in this, and this was the Mercado. But this Tica was very nice, so we sat down, we had our drinks, and she went in the house, she brought out some bananas, and we had a very nice visit. This is another cultural thing that I had noticed as we were hiking. This is a 3-inch statue. It's called La Negrita, the Black Madonna. So this is the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus. It's called the Black Madonna because the stone is actually black. But the legend goes that a peasant girl in the 1600s found it sitting on a rock. So she took it home, she put it next to her bed, and the next morning it was gone. Here's some other pictures. And so the next day she went back and she found it and she took it back to the priest. And the priest locked it in the church, but the next day the Madonna was gone. So the priest took that as a miracle. And in that very spot where this black negrita was found, they built a basilica in Cartago. And this is Our Lady of the Angels today. The Black Madonna is inside the basilica, and about 2 million people come every year to pay homage. Now we are saying goodbye to the mountains. We spent our last night at a campground, and the nights we spent camping, they provided the tent and the mattress and the sheet, and it was just wonderful. Everything was outside, the showers and the dining room, and it was really good last night. And everything from here is downhill. Now it's day 13. Now we're going to get into Quepos. We're on the coastal plains. We're almost finished. and we walked through a palm oil plantation. Now, palm oil seeds are very in high demand because the palm oil is used in lots of things. It's used in vegetable oil. It's used in biofuels and makeup. And these these are African palm oils. They were actually imported to Costa Rica in order to build the economy. But there's conflict going on right now because the deforestation laws are not being enforced. And so companies who are trying to steal the land from the Cabecars, they are deforesting. These people are deforesting parts of Costa Rica to plant these palm oil trees, and they're displacing the Indians. And just a few years ago, 2 of the Indians were murdered over this conflict, so it has gotten violent. Oh, and this is a little squirrel monkey. I saw lots of animals. I stink at taking pictures, okay? So I don't have any great pictures, except I did get a video of these little squirrel monkeys. And they were eating breakfast that day. So a little squirrel monkey is about 12 inches long. He's eating the berries. And you can see him right there. He's enjoying his breakfast. But when I researched it, I found out that there are squirrel monkeys in Florida that were brought in. They're not natural, but they brought them into Fort Lauderdale, Silver Springs area in order to boost tourism, but they're not native to Florida. But if you say, oh, we have monkeys in Florida, it's like, well, they're kind of invasive monkeys. Now we are at Capos. We're at the Pacific Ocean. We were not able to get down to the water. We tried because I thought, oh, we need to put our toes in the Pacific Ocean, but it's more of a port than a beach, and that's our finish. So we had a great finish. A nice Swedish girl took our picture. We walked across the street for a celebration. We heard that the restaurant across the street would give you free beer if you finished the Camino, but we don't drink. So we got Cokes instead, and we signed the book. And I have a few tips for you in case you want to hike, which I highly recommend, the Camino de Costa Rica. There are not a lot of ATMs, and the currency is colones, but the U.S. currency is accepted, which made it very convenient. So when I ran out of colones, I could use my U.S. dollars. They give you the change in colones, but it was very convenient. Put WhatsApp on your phone because all the Ticos use WhatsApp. You can text, you can make phone calls. It was also very convenient. Oh, don't flush the toilet paper because it'll clog the pipes. And if you accidentally put the toilet paper in the toilet, you have to go find a stick and get it out. Yeah, which is more embarrassing than anything else. And the other thing I learned was don't slam the car doors, which I learned the first time I slammed a car door. And Tammy said, Ticos get very angry when you slam the car door. And I went, oh, okay. So that's just another tip. So I'm always up for an adventure. If you're an adventurer, if you think adventure is dangerous, try routine. It's lethal, and that's by Paulo Coelho. He's a Brazilian author who writes fantasy, and he's a wonderful author, and so I like the way he thinks. I do have one more slide. If you're interested in hiking the Camino de Costa Rica, it has a very strong network system. It is well structured. There's lots of information on the Mar a Mar Association, which is dedicated to taking care of the Camino, and it's at CaminoDeCostaRica.org. And that's all. Thank you.